Okay, everybody, this is Sheets, and I'm going to be going over the NBA slate for this evening, Monday following Super Bowl Sunday. I hope you all had a good Super Bowl Sunday and a good weekend. Bobby's out today, so I'm going to be doing these myself, and I really hope that you guys have been learning something from all this content. And as you guys know, that at least for the last, since we started it, we haven't been charging anything for it. And eventually, I don't know what Bobby's plans are as far as developing his own site or whatever he plans to do. But eventually, we're going to have to, obviously make money and charge people for it. But in the meantime, what I would like you guys to do, if you wouldn't mind, is if you are getting something out of the content, whether you're making money or just learning something from it, if you wouldn't mind, there's a charity which a really good friend of mine is supporting a fundraiser for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And if you could just, if you're getting anything out of it, or even if you're not, if you wouldn't mind just going here and, and just donating whatever you can. I mean, anything, honestly. And I'm going to post a link to this in the chat as well. And, hopefully you guys can help out with that. I'll post the link, in the YouTube description. So tonight, for the NBA slate, I'd like to say that it's very similar to a lot of slates in that news just comes out throughout the day. And even though I'm doing it a little later than normal, this preview, there are still quite a bit of injuries that could develop that we don't really know about. So you are going to have to, keep that in mind as I go through this. But you guys already know that by now. But with respect to this slate, there is quite a lot of variance in the information. Let's just put it that way. The other thing that's interesting about tonight's slate is that I don't know how many of you do full 150 max entries and things like that, but tonight for the main one on DraftKings, they're making that big 100K for first one a $4 tournament, which means there's going to be a lot more people going for that 150 max. Probably people who are not as skilled with the 150 max entries and the process of doing that. So I would say that this tournament is probably going to be slightly weaker than it usually is. Now, keep that in mind. There's still quite a bit of variance in a huge slate like this, and the rake is no bargain either. But just kind of let you guys know. As a matter of fact, I'll probably put some more entries in this one than I usually do as well. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to start at the end, and the reason why is you look at first of all, I like to start at the end to make sure I get to these end games. And in case I want to stack them, I'll have some more flexibility if I play the late games. But the other thing, I just want to get a sense for how the injury news is kind of breaking today. Like, for example, most of the injury news that's relevant is going to be in these first bunch of games. So I'm not worried too much about getting screwed after lock on either FanDuel or DraftKings, requiring me to kind of just stay around all that often. All that late after the games start. So, for example, first of all, this the LA San Antonio game. Look, there's always a bit of variance, and you never know who can get ruled out after lock. But I think that I shouldn't say this, but there's a decent % chance that we're safe. Let's put it that way, as far as this game goes. Now, with that said, as much as I like the late games in general, in concept, I really don't like anybody from this game. Nobody really stands out. The game is not very appealing from a stack perspective for a lot of reasons. I don't like the spread. I don't like the values. And probably going to just avoid this game completely if you want to know the truth. So we could just kind of move backwards. So before I even look at the Minnesota-Sacramento game, just to give you kind of a slate overview, the news that's already come out, well, Luka remains out. Kristaps is presumed in, so he's going to pop as a huge value. There's a bit of news pending on D'Angelo Russell. He's considered questionable for now. If he's out, then that whole situation changes. What's his name? Kyrie was already ruled out, so those salaries have kind of adjusted a little bit. They priced Spencer Dinwiddie up. For Phoenix, Ricky Rubio is still questionable, so that could open up some things if that plays out. Kemba Walker and Marcus Smart are out, so I presume. So those values are kind of popping. And this Detroit value, which is probably going to be the main driver of the slate. Well, there are two bits, actually. Before I get to the Detroit news, Trae Young is legitimately questionable. And if he's out, then like everything changes, right? It reduces one stud that people could pay for. Number two, it opens up all this Teague and Brandon Goodwin and everybody else value from Atlanta, which in turn would make other studs more popular also because you can get to them. So that's a bit of news that we're waiting on too, but that's going to happen before lock. I'm presuming that Derrick Rose is out. I mean, he left early with a groin injury. That's already opening up just some really, really cheap and chalky value in Detroit, being Reggie Jackson and Bruce Brown. And how you attack those is going to be, it's going to be one of the decisions you're going to have to make. I mean, they're both going to show as really good values, but in GPPs, you want to play the two of them together. If you do you have to run back guys from Memphis? Or if you just want to play those guys on their own, does that open up, good stacking situations from other games or good pay-up situations from other games? So it's kind of what we're looking at with respect to the slate in general. So with that in mind, Minnesota-Sacramento is, to me, a very, very intriguing game because, number one, it's 227-point total, and it's a low spread, and it's a late game. So all those things kind of combine to create a game environment that I really want to attack if possible. So that's the first thing I'll do. I'll look and see if I like anybody on either side. And a standout right off the bat is going to be De'Aaron Fox. Now, this is not going to be any secret. I mean, he is probably going to be really popular, but I don't know. It's a really, really big slate. And if, in fact, value continues to open up, allowing you to pay up for maybe Trae Young or other guys like that, maybe De'Aaron Fox gets lost a little bit, but I doubt it. I do think he's going to be pretty popular. But nonetheless, he does rate to be a really, really good play. If Bobby were here, he would reemphasize how he likes to attack Minnesota to the point where he would even just double ownerships against Minnesota just kind of blindly. Again, I'm not at that level yet where I could just do that, but I do think that De'Aaron Fox looks to be a really, really strong play. Now, other guys from Minnesota from Sacramento that are playable, or I guess Bielitsa, but I mean, he just looks okay. Harrison Barnes looked very intriguing at 4,300. I mean, he rates to be fine. I could use him in part of a game stack, I suppose. But if you want somebody that's you're going to play multiple guys from this game, or if you want a kind of a really low-owned one-off, and he's a guy I've talked about before, is going to be a infinitesimally owned Buddy Hield. And we talked about him like a week ago. He, coming off the bench, he gets to play again in that second unit run. And that's a really, really huge deal, And if he's going to get 30 minutes, which is possible, not mostly, but with a good amount of it against the second unit, he's a very, very strong play. And he's not projecting to be really, really, really strong because we're only projecting him to have like 28, maybe 30 minutes tops. But he's one of those guys I like to call self-correlating, that if he is hot, he's making shots, and the team is in it because of him, they're going to let him roll, So remember, just like a week or so ago, he's projected for 28 minutes. He had a really, really good run. He ended up playing overtime and played 35 minutes or something. So it's possible he has minutes upside from here. And again, he's a good GPP play because, he's going to, if he hits, he could hit a ceiling. He's not, going to be those low floor, that is high floor plays where you can count on him getting 30 because, quite frankly, you can't, coming off the bench and considering he is kind of streaky. And, if he comes off the bench and is not performing, they're not going to give him more than bench run. But I do think that as a low-owned play, I think that you can play him. Now, on the other side, again, I'd love to play guys in Minnesota to make it work. And the guy that's standing out as probably the best play is going to be a really, really expensive Karl Anthony Towns. Now, really expensive is, I guess, relative. I mean, he's 10-6, and when you compare him to, say, Andre Drummond at 9-4, it's kind of difficult to justify playing Cat. But with with that high price is going to come, much lower ownership than someone like Drummond. So it is definitely a GPP play. He definitely has upside. And if you wanted to play a cat with Fox 1v1, I definitely think it makes a lot of sense. Now, again, keep in mind, he hasn't really smashed since he's come back, and he is also, had the opportunities, had some easy matchups. He actually had overtime in one game, and he still didn't really smash. But that's why he can keep his ownership low, I suppose. So he's definitely someone that I could pay up for, especially if this value continues to be strong with these Detroit values and these, and let's say that Trae Young is ruled out and you could play Jeff Teague or something like that. Then it becomes easier to get Cat in. Now, again, that cuts both ways. If it becomes easier to get Cat in, maybe his ownership goes up. So, again, you always have to just watch your ownerships and just make sure that you're leveraging in the right way. So I do think that from this game, you could do that. You could play Fox with Cat, and that makes some sense. I don't think that I'm going to play Wiggins today. He would be my second option. So that was pretty much it, I think, on Minnesota as far as this game goes. So it's not like a big, huge stack game. But you know what? If I'm going to play a guy 10-6, I don't need multiple guys on Minnesota, if you want to know the truth. I don't want to spend too much salary on the Minnesota side of it. So I could play something like Fox with Cat, or if you really wanted to be nasty, you could play like Healed with Cat, or maybe Fox and Healed with Cat. That's a little difficult, but you might be able to get away with that. So again, I don't know why I'm leaning towards this Healed play, but again, GPP play, really low ownership. Guy has just all kinds of upside. So I might play some with him. Now I alluded to this Detroit thing, so let's attack this right now. With Rose out, and I'm just presuming he's out. If he's in, then all this is different. Then what's intriguing to me is that there are three strong plays that are emerging from the Detroit side of things. One is going to be, the obvious being Andre Drummond. The obvious just from his price. You just know he's going to be really popular here at 9,400. So he's rated to be a really good play, and I presume really popular. But the direct result of Rose being out opens up this value with Reggie Jackson and Bruce Brown. So we got to talk about that. Both of these guys rate to be extremely strong values in a vacuum, right? Reggie Jackson has been brought back from injury, and he has actually got a chance to play all 5 minutes of overtime yesterday, which means that they have I don't think they have any real minutes restriction on him, okay? So, and Bruce Brown, just at 3,800, is also the natural beneficiary of Rose being out, and he's projecting for somewhere around 30 points, depending on where you look. So both these guys are really, really, strong values. But, a couple of things about it. Number one, I struggle whether I want to play the two of them in the same lineup. I just have this sense that I'm not supposed to play them both together. So if I played them, I'll probably play max one of either of them. The only way I would play them both is if I really wanted to run it back with a Memphis guy, which I might. The other thing I will say is that if these guys really become huge chalk, I will remind you that it is a back-to-back off an overtime game, which is certainly no bargain. So I do think that one or both of them are fadeable if you want to know the truth. I certainly see variations where they give Tony Snell more run. They let Langston Galloway kind of go. I think it's very, very possible. Or Reggie Jackson is coming back from injury still and coming off a back-to-back overtime game. Remember, he did come off the bench for that game. I presume if they have no choice but to start him today if Rose is out. But, I do think there's a certain risk that comes to it. But then again, they were only projecting for 30 minutes and projecting to be a good value. So it's going to be kind of a difficult fade. But if it becomes too high owned, I might fade him. And if I do play him, I'll definitely play them with lower owned guys in complement. Speaking of which, on the Memphis side, I think it's the same guys as I always play. I'll take a shot with Morant, and he is extremely frustrating, to be sure. And then I would take a choice between the two bigs between Jaren Jackson Jr. and Valanciunas, and I wouldn't want to play them in the same lineup. That would be my idea. So again, this could be a stackable type game, but again, you got to watch your ownerships here. You know, like if these Memphis guys somehow become really popular, then what you're going to be doing is stacking chalk with chalk, which is usually not the greatest idea in the world. Now, it turns out right now these guys are about somewhere between 10 and 20%, but it's a pretty decent sized range. I don't know. I don't know if I can get away with that. I don't know if I could play, say, Morant and Jackson with both those guys from Detroit with Drummond. You know, if I did that, what I'd have to do is really go off the board for the rest of my lineup, which I certainly could do. So maybe that's what I would make sure to do if I hand built, would be to make sure that I would, if I did play multiple guys from this game, then the rest of my lineup would really have to be like, I would say 5% owned. All right, going back in time to Boston, Atlanta. This is going to be dependent on Trae Young, you know, whether he's in or not. If he is out, then you're going to get an opportunity to bust with Jeff Teague again, if that's what you want to do. So, because if in fact Trae Young is ruled out and Teague is starting, you know, I don't care how much he busted people last time this happened, but if he's 3,900 starting, I mean, he's just going to be a lock. You know what I mean? And remember, lock is not guaranteed, but from a projection standpoint, it's just going to be difficult to fade a starting point guard like this with 32 minutes of projected minutes. So, if in fact Young sits, Trae Young starts, you're just going to have to play him, I think. Even though, again, he didn't exactly do it for us last time. I will also say, just in case, if they do announce Trae Young out and they do give Brandon Goodwin the start somehow, then by the same token, you know, Brandon Goodwin would kind of be a lock. I mean, these point guards in this role that are actually decent players, you know, as opposed to like Elie Okobo, for example, like these guys are really, really difficult to fade if in fact they do get that start. Now, what if Trae Young does play? I mean, I'm just kind of a little different than most people. You know, I know that some people will forgive if a questionable guy comes and plays or something like that. Sprained his ankle on Saturday. There's hope he's going to be able to play. And just the way I look at injuries, and the way I look at guys coming back from injuries, guys that are questionable or ruled in, you know, if they're low owned and cheap, I'll forgive them. But if Trae Young does get ownership and he's expected to carry the load in a difficult matchup, I just don't think I can do it. You know, I just don't think I can do it. You know, I really still also believe that they did get Jeff Teague in part to be able to limit Trae Young's minutes where they could. And coming off an injury, even if it's just a sprained ankle, again, they have to protect this guy. So I do think there's a chance he doesn't play. And I also think there's a chance if he does play, he just doesn't, you know, go full out for 40 minutes. You know? And remember, they're playing the Celtics. This could be a difficult matchup. And if, for whatever reason, Boston's handling them, I don't think they'll have any problem just putting Trae Young on the shelf. Now, again, this goes in contrast with what they usually do, which they used to just run him out there. But I think coming off an injury, look, it's just my opinion, right? But I'll say this, that if he's chalk, I'll go with my opinion a little more often. So if he comes off as being 5% owned, I mean, then sure, I'll take a shot that the sprained ankles, who cares? But if he does get ownership, then I'll be more looking for an excuse to not play him than to play him. Elsewhere on Atlanta, I mean, nothing too exciting, except to say if Trae Young's out, once again, Herter, Collins, you know, guys like that. The other Atlanta guy I'll look at is maybe DeAndre Hunter. But this whole game is kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say it's not exciting, but it's just okay. Like, for example, you go on the Boston side. Now, on the Boston side, you have, what's his name, Kemba out and Marcus Smart, I guess, doubtful. And I'm not 100% convinced that Jaylen Brown's going to play also. I guess he's not on the injury report anymore. Okay. I guess he's okay. So you're going to have your normal values from Boston, and your normal being your, your guys that can play value, which there's Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and the guys who can't play value, that being Brad Wanamaker. Now, again, I say that only half facetiously, but the reason why I mention it is, when you run optimals and things like that, Brad Wanamaker is going to pop is probably a really, really good play to play within your lineups at 3,600. And, because he's taking over Marcus Smart minutes and Kemba's out too, so he's going to probably have to play 25 to 30 minutes. But his usage is just extremely, extremely low. His rates are just really bad. He averages maybe 0.75, 0.8 fantasy points per minute. So there's certainly, if he turns out to be real chalk, I have no problem letting him beat me, if that makes any sense. Like, for example, I would much rather, if Trae Young were out, play kind of a crappy Jeff Teague as opposed to kind of a crappy Brad Wanamaker. Because, because they have options. So, like, they don't even have to have Brad Wanamaker play point. They could play Jaylen Brown play point. They could have, they could even have freaking Jason Tatum bring the ball up. It's fine. So, Brad Wanamaker will pop as decent play in optimals. I don't think he has that GPP winning upside for me. But, play whoever you want, right? To turn a phrase. I don't think Gordon Hayward at 7,900 is going to pop as a really, really good play. And as a result, I'm probably not going to play him. So from this game, nothing fancy, kind of a chalky Jason Tatum, kind of a chalky Jaylen Brown. Again, nothing special, but, nothing special with respect to, being off the board, but those are definitely two very strong plays with all these other guys out. Remember, they're playing Atlanta. Atlanta plays no defense. So whenever you play someone that plays no defense, you're in a good spot. All right, I guess moving backwards, I suppose. Philly, Miami. Okay. I really am not a big fan from anybody in Miami, with the exception of, remember, just there's always variance with these guards from Miami. So just make sure that, that Winslow is out or Winslow is in, and how projections kind of update if Dragic gets ruled out or Kendrick Nunn. Like, all these guys have a lot of variance to them. So just keep an eye on that one. As it stands now, not a big fan of anybody in this game. You want to know the truth. On the Miami side. Butler would be my best play, but I think they're just much better 8K options here. On the Philly side, I am actually kind of interested in this. Even though it's not the easiest matchup in the world, if the ownership kind of stays the way it is, I think I might be interested in a Joel Embiid. And the reason why is, look, he's not going to project to be as good of a play as Andre Drummond, for example, but it is kind of the same price tag. It's a very natural pivot, and the ownership is going to be just, I'm just going to look at it right now. The ownership gap between those two, I think is going to be pretty high, right? You'd have to think 20% to 10% at the least. So I certainly have no problem with an Embiid pivot off of Drummond if you want to do that. New York, Cleveland. Let me see if I can spend less than 30 seconds on this game. Yeah, all these guys, the guys that were out for New York are back, like Peyton's back. So I'm not a big fan of anybody from the Knicks. If you want to play Kevin Love as a one-off, you could do that. He actually rates to be a pretty good play. So that would be the one bit of interest I would have. But overall, just kind of unexciting. I guess that's the best way I can describe it. Speaking of unexciting, good grief. Orlando against Charlotte. I feel the same way about this game as I did about the Knicks game. I like just one guy, I think, and it's another center. So I'll look at it. So I do like Vooch in this spot. He does project to be really good. And again, with Drummond being so popular and, center being a position where you have a lot of decent options tonight, I do think Vooch can come in as a low-owned alternative. So that is the one place I would go in Orlando. As far as the Charlotte side, even guys I like to play like Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier, I just can't do it. I mean, they don't project that well, and Orlando just sucks all the air out of the ball. You know, I just don't see it happening. You might see some Malik Monk pop up in some optimals somewhere. So I guess if you had to try somebody, maybe you could try him. But if he works out to be double-digit owned, this is just not a matchup I just want to just spend a lot of time attacking, if that makes any sense. Okay, down to the last two games, and very, very different type of games. So Golden State, Washington is obviously going to be very intriguing because it's a 235 total. So when you have a 235 total, and it's also projected to be a 4 or 5 point spread, you're naturally going to want to gravitate to the game. But it seems as though the salary makers were ahead of us on this one. Like they priced Bradley Beal up to 10-1. And on the other side, they priced D'Angelo Russell to 8-9. And D'Angelo Russell's questionable. So, and the rest of the players on this team, on both teams, are really not too appealing to me. So this is really, really odd because it just looks as though DraftKings just did a pretty good job of making this game, I don't say unplayable, but it's made all the price tags very, what's the word, appropriate, I guess. So, boy, I was really looking forward to attacking this game. But I don't know. I guess the one thing I have to do is I have to play one lineup with Beal with Russell, right? I guess that's exactly what I would do. What I would do is I would play either a Russell with Beal or just play neither of them. Because neither of them really look to be like that great plays at their prices. So what I would do is make a rule, or when I hand build, I would play only Beal and Russell if I were going to play them together. So at least you get that, that up and back thing that you like to see when you have, two lead guards like that. So that's the way I would approach this game. I just don't see myself getting to too many other guys, as disgusting as that sounds. All right. And the last game is Dallas against Indiana. So I think you can find a little bit of sneakiness out of this one. So first of all, Luka remains out, and as a result, Kristaps Porzingis remains kind of like the projections darling right now. So he is popping as a really, really strong play, and as a matter of fact, he's also projected to be probably the highest owned player on the slate. He was going to be that the other day, and then he got ruled out, and all this other Dallas value kind of got plugged in, which I talked about on Saturday. So aside from Porzingis, the other guys on this team are not projected to be that great plays, like Jalen Brunson. They priced him up to $6K, for example. Willie Cauley-Stein still at $4,200. Maybe that's interesting. Kleber at $5K. I don't know. It's a tough matchup for bigs in this game. So I don't know if I'm going to want to do that. If I had to play somebody, and again, this is where this game can be a little sneaky. If I play somebody in Indiana, or even if I don't, if you want to, again, kind of a gross play, Tim Hardaway Jr. busted pretty hard the other day when he had just no business busting. He played full minutes, and he just couldn't make anything. He was just terrible. And for the same reason, he only got off 12 shots. And for the same reason that he is very dangerous to play as chalk, he is also equally kind of dangerous to not play when he's low owned. He is, with Luka out, going to be in a position to jack up shots if things kind of fall his way. So I do believe that, oh my God, Seth Curry out? Let me see that. Oh my God. So, yeah, I think this is where I'm going. I think that someone like Hardaway no one's going to play him. He projects bad. People just busted with him. Maybe I'll take a shot at Hardaway, who's just, it's going to be rough. But that's something you could do. So if you don't want to play Porzingis, or if you want to play both of them, you can go ahead. On the Indiana side, this is all still very confusing to me because on the one hand, the best play is still looking to be, where is he? Malcolm Brogdon. I mean, he's projecting really well, but I just don't know if they can, if the projections are accounting for Oladipo being back as much as they should. You know, Oladipo's been kind of crappy the last few games since he's been back, but they're only going to keep playing him, 24 minutes, and then eventually he's going to play more. And when he's in the game, he's just going to take usage away. So I don't know. I mean, if I want to play Brogdon, but with that said, since Oladipo's been back, he's got a 43 and a 33. I mean, I'd take one of them. I wouldn't take the other. So I don't know. If he works out to be chalky, I might want to fade him too. The interesting part of this game for me is that TJ Warren is out. And, I don't, I think that's important because he does take a lot of shots, and those shots do have to go somewhere. Brogdon's not really someone who wants to take over by shooting the ball a lot. And Sabonis, it kind of runs through him a little more. He's not the guy to create his own shot from the outside, right? So this guy might be chalky, but if he's not, Justin Holiday maybe at 3,700, he seems to me to be the guy to take over that TJ Warren type role, if that makes any sense. So he's a guy that I might want to try from this game. So overall, what do we think? What do you think about all this? Oh, wait a minute. Did I forget one? Oh, I sure did. Sorry about this, guys. Wrapping up, which could end up being my favorite game, if you want to know the truth, is Phoenix against Brooklyn. I mean, I alluded to this before that Rubio might be, he's still questionable, but there are actually a couple of really good plays from this game. The main three Phoenix guys, that being Ayton, Booker, and Rubio, all project really, really well. And to a lesser extent, Oubre. So I would say Ayton, Booker, and Rubio. And on the Brooklyn side, what's his name? Kyrie was ruled out. That was a pretty nasty fall that he took. So all these Nets guys kind of step up a little bit. Now, they did price Dinwiddie up to 8K, which is pretty sharp. But he actually looks to be, boy, oh boy, there's so many other really good 8K guys that it would be kind of difficult to play him. But what you could do with him is this could be a sneaky stack type game, because what you could do with Dinwiddie, and this is what I like doing with these with Nets in general, is I like to pair the point guard with one of these wings and maybe a center, but at least with one of these wings, and then run it back with someone. And you'll see where I'm kind of headed here. If we put, say, Dinwiddie could be either, makes it probably more popular, but and we run him back with Booker, who you guys know is my favorite type of run back, just high usage, big ceiling type guy. Then what you could do is pick from one of these other net wings to get some Dinwiddie assists, that being either Harris or LeVert or Temple, whichever one you think is going to be the lowest owned. You want to know the truth. They're all going to project to be very similar. Like right now, Temple would look to be the lowest owned of them all, okay? And then you're really onto something. I mean, I think this is a pretty high upside type stack. You play Dinwiddie with one of these, with one of those, with one of those wings, or you could play him with one of the centers. Now, Jared Allen's looking really, really expensive, so I don't think I could do it. But and then do you want to play DeAndre Jordan? Maybe. That might be the way to go, but you don't get that same correlation between Dinwiddie and Jordan as you do between Dinwiddie and, say, Allen, because they're on the floor more together. But if you do see, by the way, that Jordan is starting somehow, then you could do this. Then you do Dinwiddie with Jordan with Temple or something like that. So if you wanted to, you could do a 2x2. You could run, Dinwiddie with one of the wings and run it back with Booker and Ayton if you want. And with all this other value, like Detroit value and stuff like that, you could certainly afford this really, really easily. So again, I think is a very, very intriguing stacky type game. 225 total, low spread. And the cool thing is Dinwiddie's probably going to be low owned. There's just so many other 8K guys that I have to say just kind of look better, right? So I mean, they're gonna play him over Butler, maybe actually maybe not. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I do think that Dinwiddie with one of these wings with Booker, I think this is one build that I'm going to focus on. And then again, going back, depending on whether these guys are out or not, the Boston-Atlanta game, like if Trey is out, then I might do something like Teague with one of the other Atlanta guys and run it back with a Tatum, something like that. I don't think I'm going to do this Detroit-Memphis thing, the chalk v. chalk angle. Although, let me think about this. What if you did this? What if you did what I just said? You did the Brooklyn things. Let's fade Porzingis for just a minute. Okay? And let's say you wanted to play, what did I say, John Morant? So where would I be able to put him? See, this becomes difficult. So if I wanted to put Morant, I'd have to put him in the utility, right? And then, but what you could do is one of these guys are small forward eligible, right? So Bruce Brown would be small forward eligible, so you could put him in there. And then what you could do is, since you have a center occupied by Ayton, could Ayton be power forward? No. What about Valanciunas? Can you make him? No. So you'd have to go to Triple J, right? So you put him over there. So you can actually get away with, the little Memphis mini stack, run it back with Bruce Brown, okay? Not use Drummond, right? Which is going to be one chalky way to build. And then you have 5,000 left for maybe a good forward that we talked about. Anybody come up from here? Ooh, you want to make a triple stack? You want to put Crowder in? Or is that asking for trouble? I don't know. You want to put Joe Harris as a forward, opening up a guard position. Maybe you want to do that. You want to play Jeremy Lamb maybe in that TJ Warren position. Okay, you could do that. That'd be kind of interesting. Okay. So I would say that from my perspective, I'm going to look to either that Brooklyn-Phoenix game, I think, is an intriguing one to attack. I think that the Memphis-Detroit game, if you do it right, you could attack that one. And I believe that the Minnesota-Sacramento game, you could go after that one as well. And I guess your super sneaky one, if I had to give you a fourth one to go after, would be that Dallas-Indiana game. Because I don't think anybody's going there. So I think with that, I think I'm going to call this. I think there's a lot of kind of low-owned ways you can go today, and there's a certain amount of value that allows you to do that. But I would be careful with with playing too much of the Bruce Brown and Reggie Jackson together. That would be my first thing. And likewise, the Celtics, Tatum, if he turns out to be too chalky, guys like that just are not my favorite because he does score a lot. So if that's the case, you're going to rely on him to up his rates in other ways that maybe he is not prepared to do. On the other hand, with Kemba out, as I mentioned, you could play some point Tatum, have him use some pick and roll action. So maybe he's not so terrible. All right. I hope that was helpful. And once again, if you do like this content, it's going to be in the description as well. But try your best to just, support us by at least supporting my buddy and his and their fundraising efforts for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. All right, that's all I had. I will hopefully come on and do a FanDuel one in a few minutes.